Imagine this: every day, you're making choices, big and small, often without even realizing the influences behind them. Studies show that most decisions are guided by unseen forces, powerful yet invisible drivers that shape everything from the food you eat to the career paths you choose. Research by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman highlights that a staggering amount of our decision-making is subconscious, driven by biases and patterns we often overlook. But what are these unseen forces guiding our choices? We like to think of ourselves as logical beings, but the truth is, subconscious biases drive most of our decisions. Point 1. Anchoring bias. One common influence is anchoring bias, where the first piece of information we encounter impacts how we make subsequent choices. For example, if you see a high price tag first, a lower one seems like a bargain even if it's not. Point 2. Confirmation bias. Another powerful influence is confirmation bias. This is our tendency to favor information that supports what we already believe. Studies show we actively seek out data that aligns with our views, impacting everything from what we buy to whom we trust. Have you ever found yourself choosing something because everyone else is? That's social proof at play, a concept popularized by psychologist Robert Cialdini. When we see others doing something, our brains interpret it as the right choice. Point 1. Herd mentality. We're hardwired to follow the crowd. It's a survival instinct that dates back to early human history. Today, social proof influences us in everything from trends to tech choices. It's why we trust a crowded restaurant more than an empty one, or choose the product with hundreds of positive reviews. Point 2. The influence of celebrities and influencers. Social proof is magnified by celebrities and influencers. When someone we admire endorses a product or shares a viewpoint, we're more likely to follow suit, subconsciously guided by a desire to belong or emulate them. Our decisions are also deeply influenced by emotions. While we like to think we make choices based on logic, feelings play a significant, often unseen, role. Point 1. Emotional triggers. Companies know how to tap into emotional triggers to influence our buying behavior. Ads often play on happiness, nostalgia, or even fear to guide our decisions. For example, a touching ad about family might lead us to choose a particular brand, even if other options are equally good. Point 2. The role of fear and uncertainty. Fear is especially powerful. It's a primal emotion that heavily influences our choices. Research by neuroscientist Antonio Damasio reveals that when emotions are removed from the equation, people struggle to make decisions. This shows just how deeply emotions are embedded in our decision-making process. Another unseen force that shapes our decisions is decision fatigue, which happens when we're overloaded with choices. Point 1. The impact of too many choices. Ever feel exhausted after a day filled with decision-making? That's because making choices uses mental energy. Psychologists find that when cognitive load is high, we tend to make simpler, quicker decisions, often defaulting to what's familiar. Point 2. Decision fatigue in daily life. When we're fatigued, we often rely on habits or take the easy option. This is why people often stick to routines. They eliminate the need to make choices repeatedly, saving mental energy for more critical decisions. Past experiences and conditioning heavily impact our decisions, often without us realizing it. Point 1. Learned behavior and patterns. Many of our preferences are shaped by experiences early in life. For example, someone who grew up in a health-conscious household might automatically lean toward healthier choices, even if they don't consciously think about it. Point 2. Conditioning from society and culture. Society and cultural norms also play a role in shaping our choices. From the careers we consider to the relationships we pursue, societal expectations create boundaries that shape our options, often guiding us along a safe path rather than one that might be more fulfilling. The availability heuristic is our tendency to make decisions based on what is most readily available in our memory, which is often influenced by recent events. Point 1. Recent events and media influence. If something is fresh in our minds like a recent news story or viral event, we're more likely to factor it into our decisions. This is why we might avoid certain foods after hearing a negative report or choose specific products based on recent trends. Point 2. The impact of fear-based news. News outlets often highlight sensational stories to capture attention, which can heavily influence our decisions. For instance, hearing multiple reports about accidents might lead us to overestimate their likelihood and avoid certain activities. Believe it or not, default options often guide our decisions, simply because they require no action. Point 1. Inertia and default choices. Default choices are everywhere, from the software we use to retirement plans. Research shows that people tend to stick with default settings even if changing them would be more beneficial. Point 2. How defaults influence major decisions. This is significant in areas like organ donation, retirement savings, and more. The power of defaults is that they feel like the normal or expected option, so many people accept them without questioning. Repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity often leads to preference. This is why ads are so effective. They subtly shape our preferences over time. Point 1. The mere exposure effect. This psychological phenomenon states that people develop a preference for things they see repeatedly. In everyday life, we tend to gravitate toward what is familiar, whether it's a product, a person, or an idea. Point 2. Brand loyalty and repetition. Advertisers use this effect to build brand loyalty. The more familiar we are with a brand, the more likely we are to trust it, and that trust often translates to our decision-making. Our decisions are rarely as straightforward as they seem. Subconscious biases, emotional triggers, social influences, and even our past experiences all play into the choices we make. By becoming aware of these unseen forces, we gain a better understanding of ourselves and, ultimately, make choices that align with our true goals.